We're about to witness one of the largest generational transitions of wealth in history. So how are Swiss banks preparing for the handover to the next generations? I'm Tanya König and welcome to finance.swiss. Today I'm speaking with Viola Steinhoff Werner, who heads the Global Next Generation and Families Department at Credit Suisse. So, hi Viola.
Hello.
Let's jump straight into it. So how does the next generation differ from the current ones and why?
You know, the interesting part of the next generation is it was always there, right? So when you look through the whole history of life, there was always a next generation. And so I also had to ask myself, what is so different about this next generation that we're talking about now that is also being confronted with the biggest wealth transfer in history, which is the biggest generation also in history because over 50% are under the age of 30. And so in that regards, what is so different is, I think, that every generation is a kind of testimony of what they experience, what they live through, what access they have. And this next generation is, in that regards, very different to the current generation because they have lived, worked, and studied in many different countries and not just one. They also have information at their fingertips, not only because of digitalization, but also because they just have much more educational opportunities than the current generation had. And that is influencing how they look at the world, what they see as purpose, and also how they look at wealth.
That sounds a bit challenging for banks. How do banks address those differences?
You've seen that the next gen can challenge and also really disrupt certain industries, and we in the banking industry are obviously also seeing that as a risk on the one hand side because certain things, how we do stuff or what we also do is not so appealing to them, and on the other hand it's also a great opportunity. So if you see it as a bank just as a segment which we have to catch, it might be a risk. If you see it as an opportunity, it might really be the kind of chance to step up and really look at everything that we do with new lenses. And that's what I love at the next gen, it's an attitude. To ask the question like, how do we work with clients? What products do we offer? What's the meaning of wealth that we somehow also have as bankers? And how can we really make sure also that the face of banks potentially is changing? Because since 2008, I think there's a huge gap in trust also into the institutions of banks.
Absolutely. I was just about to ask how important the brand of a bank or financial institution is for the next generation.
Whenever you look at the next gen, it's huge many individuals, right? So it's always a bit tricky to just say this is the next gen. But thinking about what they have lived through and how they actually can look at work and banking and money and all that, you have to understand one thing. Purpose is very important. Really understand what are my values and that I do invest and also live and work according to my values. And that is something which really everybody needs to understand about next gen, why purpose is so important. And thinking about that, that is where brands become so important, that a link between a customer, the next gen, and the company, the brand, is only created if there is a kind of shared value existent. And that's why the next gen looks much more into details about the company. Not only is the product appealing, but also how's the product done? Is it sustainable or not? Have I heard about that? Can I trust that kind of brand? And that are things that I think past generations or the current generation has also done, but not in the extent that the next generation is looking at brands.
So ethical investing is also one of the important topics for Gen Z, Gen Y. So how do you as a bank advise them in topics such as ESG?
In 2013, it was the first time that I heard about impact investing from the next generation. And I thought, okay, every investment has an impact. So what is that? And the challenges I think that we've seen in the last years was always that there was 86% of the next gen really interested into topics like ESG, sustainable investing, impact investing, but only 24 were invested. Why that gap? Because there was not so clear language about what actually the products are, right? And also how you talk about impact investing, etc. And there was also not so much available. And that, I think, was where banks understood there is a next-gen need. And also in terms of Credit Suisse, thinking not only there is a need and there is more that we have to do and more that we have to offer, and also more clarity and transparency we have to give on what is available when you want to invest sustainably. Therefore, there is a huge department that is now created, Sustainability and Research Investment, SRI, that is really a whole division just looking into how can it be made easier and better and more to invest into sustainable investment. That's one thing, the offering. And the other one is also like educating, figuring out how to really make clearer and show the tools and the way how you approach that kind of investment. And that's the two angles how banks can help.
So you mentioned that the next generation is interested in impact investing, but do they also do or invest more into ESG topics?
The impact, like that you invest into that more, has increased. Why has that been the case? The next generation, again, with their attitude of, I'll question how we invest, I'll look into how we can do it better, I'll better understand what my purpose of wealth is actually looking like. And in that regards, they, as a member of families that do have quite some kind of possibilities to invest, have really influenced also the parents, so the current generation, and potentially also the grandparents. And that, I think, has shifted also that there is more investment and more, not only more interest, but also more ability to get educated as a family about that. So see Next Gen as a kind of influencer for the whole family, and then obviously that's a process. And then there is not only interest, but also more investment happening, yes.
And then another thing you mentioned is having information at their fingertips. So I wonder how important are digital services, apps for the next generation?
Digital tools are very important because Next Gen are really do-it-yourselfers. Every bank has to make sure that there is digital tools to create accessibility, transparency, and availability 24 hours, 7 days. On the other hand, what I've really experienced with the Next Gen that we're working with, it is also as much important to really have a personal relationship with a relationship manager. So when we did a survey, it was clear that 4% said this person needs to be digitally savvy. But on the other hand, what was the number one reason they looked for was really strong relationships. Because if you look for what to do with your wealth, what to do with your money, there is anything and everything there that you can look for and find. But to really understand what is good for me and what is helpful for my life goals, because I have a certain mission in my life that I want to really use my wealth for, wealth is just a tool, you need people you can look into that. And one person that can help is the relationship manager. And obviously, if we as a bank also extend that a little bit and just don't see digital tools as one opportunity to help with wealth, the relationship manager as the second thing to help with wealth, there is also a huge kind of opportunity to help also with connecting to the right people. So I call that the social capital. And that's our third, a little bit sometimes underestimated tool that a bank has to help the individual families to work with wealth.
And does it help those families or the next generation that their wealth is being managed in Switzerland?
I mean, when I look through the Next Gen lens, which I really have because of working so long with the Next Gen, they look at the world in a global, very interlinked kind of system. So I would consider every Next Gen is a very global citizen. There are certain countries that are very important when it comes to things that you connect with money and wealth, which is stability, security, safety. And there Switzerland clearly is a country that is perceived as such. But I think what is also important is to always see how do banks help to really interlink opportunities on a global level, because some of the challenges that we have and some of the opportunities that we have are global and not just local.
You mentioned chances a lot when thinking about the next generation. What chances do you see for Swiss banks?
The chances for banks when looking and working with the next generation is really to figure out what do we have which is good in the future and still needed, and what do we need in the future to meet new needs that our future clients, the next generation, has. And that includes questions about what products, what advisory process, what kind of relationship managers, and also what kind of impact and role should the bank play in society and the world. So we always say it with #NextGenCan, change the meaning of wealth, change the way how we talk about money, and change the way also what we do with our money and our wealth.
Viola, thank you very much.
Thank you.